Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast, and welcome to a lady coming in from Scottsdale, Arizona, and with a massive, massive butterfly on her wall behind her.
I have
How
one on
good
my
is that?
neck too. I've got them all.
And what is a tattoo on the
I do. Yeah, yeah.
back of your neck?
Yeah. I don't know if you can see it.
Wow, look at that!
I'm about the
Awesome,
butterflies. There's a whole reason behind it, but yeah.
sensational. Would that have anything to do with the butterfly effect?
No, not exactly, but there's a psychology component to it, so we can get into that too.
We will explore that, but I better
We
introduce
will.
you first, Kirsten.
Sure.
Kirstin Carey coming in all the way from Scottsdale, Arizona, sales conversion coach, owner at Evolve Sales Coaching and Sales Consulting. Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast.
Thank you, Darren. I'm glad to be here.
We were talking before we press record to say, I don't normally do this at 6 p.m. because originally we had this scheduled for 3 a.m. your time, and I can understand why you wanted to reschedule.
Yeah. I just didn't even see, I didn't even notice the PM part. And I was like, oh, yeah,
Yeah,
AM, PM, whatever.
even though you were saying to me before we press record that you're up, at least metaphorically, thinking about putting a proposal together at 3 o'clock this
I
morning.
was this morning. Yep. So I was awake. I was working, whether I wanted to or not.
That's it. That's it. Hey, I'm looking forward to this conversation. We'll talk all things sales. Maybe get into some healing stuff, some mindset, neuro resilience. But before we do, I do have to ask you about the butterfly because there must be a story there. Because I'd love to jump into your background as well and what led you to do what you do today. But if you can share, what's the is there a metaphor? Is there a key message there around butterfly?
Yeah. So when I first learned the actual transformative process that caterpillars go through to become butterflies, there was a component that I learned about called the imaginal cell. So like the word imagine,
Hmm.
imaginal cell. And they teach this in biology classes. They teach this in med schools. This isn't something I'm just making up out of woo-woo land. Imaginal cell. And it's the piece, it's the cell within the caterpillar that causes it to want to go through this transformative approach, which no one else or no thing else goes through quite the same way, where they go into this moment where they liquefy. They go into the cocoon stage, they're completely liquefied, and they turn around and they come back out, obviously, as this butterfly. But it's the imaginal cell that gives them the push basically to go through this death experience to come
Mm,
back out in this completely different way. And so when you understand the psychology behind that, or you understand how you yourself as a human can tap into your own imaginal cells and you can see the future version of who you are, you can see that timeline, you are driven in a different way
mm.
because you already see the outcome. So if you knew everything would be safe and everything would be fine, would you do things differently than if fear was driving you versus this imaginal cell, this belief cell that
Yeah.
knows you're coming out the other side, not just okay, but this transformed version of yourself. So I lean on that concept with clients and with people that I'm enrolling into things in the
Yeah.
sales process where can you see the other side of this? And
Yeah.
when they can't see it, they can't feel it, they're not there, they can't step into that timeline, they're going to stay in fear. And the enrollment is going to be like you're dragging them across the line, which is never a
Yeah.
fun part of the sales process. Yeah.
Love it. And then through that process, they'll often then externalize and say, "Oh, Kirsten, it didn't work for me. You didn't do this or you didn't do that, so it's your fault."
Yeah.
Versus
It's all your fault.
they
Yeah.
didn't embrace it because at the end of the day, we're responsible for our own destiny.
Yep. But if you can get somebody, and I have a whole close technique where I can help somebody onto the future timeline in a different way, where they can visualize, they can see, they can actually step into that version of themselves. The close is just basically sitting there waiting for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And they step into it, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Awesome.
Yeah. And
So,
when they don't, then it's a no. Like, let's go with the no then. Let's get excited about the fact this is not the right time for you. This is not the right thing for you.
yeah. Or maybe you're not the right person for me either.
Exactly. And I'm like, please show up in that space because I don't want to work with people that aren't going to be aligned either. So
No.
I celebrate the no's.
Well, it's interesting you say that, and having a big career in sales myself, the number of rejections that you have to deal with, and sometimes we take it really personally. But at the end of the day, if you put some perspective on it, they're just not at the right cycle of their buying process to want to take a form of action. that's going to
Mm-mm.
be of benefit to them. It's okay. I'll be still
Right.
here when they choose, but hey, maybe it's not the right time, and maybe, just maybe, they're not the right person for me anyway. So that's cool.
Yep.
Love that
Yeah.
perspective.
Agreed.
So, hey, Kirsten, let's go back, right? So you share. I'm
Okay.
not going to share your year of birth because you did share that with me before. So I'm not going to put that onto the podcast
Feel
airways.
free. Feel free.
Well, what I will say is I beat you by a few years. So I was born earlier than that. Um,
Okay.
so where
We're
did it all
still in the
start?
same group, I think.
Yeah, well,
Group-ish.
yeah, well, I was around. Let's put it this way: I was around for when man supposedly landed on the moon.
All right. Well, not too far. I mean, that's what you're
Yeah,
in the same space as my husband. So
yeah,
yeah, we're Gen
yeah.
Xers. We're in that
Gen X. Yep.
Gen
For
X all
me,
in.
December 1968 was the great month, which means that I've always had holidays, Christmas holidays around my birthday. I've never had to work on my birthday, which is cool.
Hmm. I'm January, so I feel we're just coming out of the holidays here, and everyone's going right back to work. So
So are you a
still get
Capricorn?
I still get birthday presents wrapped in Christmas paper. So
Oh wow,
yeah.
wow. Not you still get separate presents though. Surely not the
Yes, I do get. I'm far enough away that I get separate presents, but it still comes
nice.
in leftover Christmas
So
paper.
are you still in the Capricorn zone, or are you just over the
I'm an
Capricorn?
Aquarian, all in.
Ah,
All my
okay.
friends that are all into that. I apparently am all things Aquarian. So
Right. There you go.
yes,
Love it.
and they don't always say that with love. You're such an Aquarian. I'm like, oh,
Thank
okay. I
you.
don't feel that you love me on that moment, but all right,
Thank you for
I'll
that.
receive that.
Hey, love to delve into. There's a lot of stuff I'd love to talk to you about, but always like to get a bit of a baseline in terms of what your background has been that's led you to do the work that you do today.
So the shortest version, out of my college dorm room, I started helping the then boyfriend, later husband, now divorced ex-husband. I was helping him with the business that he was starting out of his college dorm room, and I thought it'd be fun to help him with this t-shirt business and the marketing of it. And then he had a legal courier service, and I was helping with the marketing of it. And then I started picking up clients outside of that. And so I helped him build these two businesses. So by the time I graduated, we were running those. And then I started just picking up small businesses as clients. And then I got to intern with a woman who had a multi-million-dollar training and speaking company and was a really well-known member of the National Speakers Association. And I, at 22, 3, I was going to chapter meetings with all these 40, 50, 60-year-olds. And I got to learn from them.
Yeah.
And I learned how to price, and I learned selling, and I learned how to pick up clients like Verizon and UPS and Aramark and really big companies here. And I was at 25, 26 getting hired to work with their high level execs on how to persuade more effectively from the platform to either their employees and or to big commercial clients.
Mm.
So I wrote the sales process for one of them in one of their divisions. And now looking back, I'm like, who did I think I was at 25 and 26 thinking I knew all this stuff? But I had 5-figure and 6-figure contracts, and I normalized money because I was hanging out with a lot of amazing mentors and really well-known people that I'm sure you know lots of their names. But in my 30s, I was killing it, doing great, speaking at all these conferences, getting hired to do all the things, learning how to sell back of the room. I used to schlep all my books and my CDs and my DVDs and my clamshell cases with me. So I learned back of the room sales, I learned platform sales, and I learned how to sell consulting contracts
Mm-hmm.
and get paid from the platform. So I thought I was all that. And somewhere in my 30s, I was really tired.
Yeah.
I was gaining weight and I wasn't feeling good, and my hair didn't feel good, and my skin was a train wreck. And I started seeing some doctors and finally got diagnosed with celiac disease, which is an autoimmune condition. And then I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is thyroid autoimmune. And I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
So I couldn't get answers in conventional medicine beyond just take this medication and hopefully we can manage the symptoms. So I went into more natural medicine. And I was getting some answers, but it was still like, we're going to manage the process, not like reverse this. And I kept thinking, logically, there has to be a way out of this. Like, there has to
Mm.
be. So, like, I wasn't tired enough. I decided to go back to school for nutrition, and I became a natural health practitioner. I opened up a series of restaurants because you do that when you're tired, apparently. You open the hardest business
That's right.
in the world. I opened businesses that are brick and mortar, they're restaurants, and then I added wellness centers onto them and started doing planned meal plans for people with autoimmune conditions. And my staff would then make the meals based on their food sensitivities and their food allergies and the meal plan designs that I came up with. And then I opened 3 restaurants doing that. I partnered with the School of Naturopathic Medicine to do it for their clients. So I started building this like little empire.
Yeah.
And had to do this, frankly, because I couldn't get answers myself. And so I built this this 7-figure company doing that. And then I did that for 15 years, went online before it was popular. I was doing teleseminars when you had to dial in the phone number and then the star and then this code before, webinars were a thing. And I built the company from the brick and mortar, then I built it online. And fortunately for me, I decided to get out of the brick and mortar side of it 10 months before COVID hit here.
Wow.
So the universe was smiling on me. And I built the company back up completely online. So I got to work with people all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught people how to reverse autoimmune conditions. So I had to sell a totally different market. Like people were literally showing up for calls with me in bed because they couldn't function. Like that's a vibration and an energy call that I can't even, working with people who are excited about the next thing they're doing versus the people who are just trying not to die today. That was a totally different sale.
Yeah.
But I've reversed my own autoimmune conditions. I built that company up. I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people do that. But after doing that for 15 years, I really felt complete in that. And I handed a lot of the company off to a lot of the people who were working for me and some of the other people coming out of schools that I felt comfortable that I could hand off clients and tie that up. But I realized the whole time I was helping people reverse their conditions, I was always mentoring small business owners and people trying to build their own companies. So it was like my side hustle was still sales and marketing. So I officially decided to close the doors on Nourish, which was my wellness company, a year ago.
Okay.
And stepped fully back into sales and marketing on purpose, not just this little side gig that I had going on. Yeah. So there's the shortest version of my backstory.
Wow. And now you're working with what sort of typical size organizations, small, medium businesses a year? Because you mentioned before the Verizons of the world and so forth. You're still involved in that sort of size organization or more the small?
No, I still really love the small business aspect. So it's usually that business, it's already got some people coming in.
Yeah.
They know what their market is. They're typically high ticket sales. And they're typically around that 50,000 or more a month, where they are right on the line between should I hire a sales team or should I keep doing it myself? How can I maximize what I'm doing? Yeah. I brought in a new client last night that was he's a practitioner and he's got people coming in, but he's handling all the sales and he's never thought to like build beyond that.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have a team. He doesn't have the people, but he's got a brilliant program. But he doesn't do anything with the people who don't enroll today. Like there's no email list. I'm like, well, how are you functioning? But he's killing it, and he could be killing it like 3 times the volume.
Yeah.
So it's that, or just the small business owner who just wants to tweak enough to understand how do I feel better in the sales process? How do I feel more aligned? Because they're doing the stereotypical bro next to his Lambo push energy force sale, and they don't feel good about it. So they want to feel more aligned themselves and frankly not work that hard, do fewer calls and have more ideal enrollments.
So hang on a second, Kirstin. Are you saying that standing next to my Lamborghini is not a good strategy for building credibility in the marketplace?
It works for some people. And when you're aligned with that, you go with that. But I've never felt good. And I've been trained by some of those guys. Like I've worked with them. I've been in masterminds with some of those guys. I know them. But I just, the Lambo bro, it doesn't sit with me. And it's, not just get them across the line, it's get them across the line authentically in a way that feels good for both you and the client.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because I love speaking to people who've been in the sales industry for many years, and you're obviously one of those, right? In terms of how do you define sales? Because when I speak with salespeople and certainly sales leaders, I often ask them who loves to be sold to. Because one of my key philosophies is selling is the ultimate form of service. So it's all about helping, it's all about serving, it's all about problem solving. It's not about how you can manipulate somebody to give them a product or a service that they don't want. So if you were to
Yeah.
describe your, I guess, your overarching philosophy around selling and what you do, how would you describe that?
It's pretty simple. It's, is the person you're talking to, their biggest need, all of us as humans, is to feel seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah.
So they want that. And you also don't realize, you make the salespeople, we want that too. So it's making everyone kind of in this space of, do we feel seen, heard, and understood? That's the first part. The second part is clarity,
Mm,
right? So can I get clear on what you need? And can you get clear on what I have? And if you are here and you want to get here, can I be the bridge to get you there?
yeah.
And if I'm not the bridge to get you there, then let's get clear on that. If I
Yeah.
am the bridge to get you there, let's get clear on that. And then let's work together to get you there and figure out how we need to get you there. Let's get
Mm,
resourceful. Let's help you find the money. Let's help you find that whatever you need to get there, the time, the money, the effort, the energy, the
yeah. Yeah.
resources. And that's about it.
So from that perspective, then you because you talk about the clarity method as a
Mhm.
process you've developed and evolved. Just talk a little bit more about that because there's a lot of salespeople out there that whether they're the Lambo guy or whatever it is that, but they lead with product, they lead with service. They don't necessarily lead with the human element where
Mhm.
seen, like, heard, etc. Right? And so, I mean, we said before, sometimes the customers that you have are not the customers you necessarily want, and you've got to be able to say no to them.
Yes.
So, can you explain a little bit more about, I guess, the clarity method? Because I think it's quite a unique, um, and I don't want to sound disrespectful here. It's foundational. It's common
Mhm.
sense based, but unfortunately, in selling in many industries, common sense is sort of not common
It's a
practice.
superpower, common sense these days. Yeah.
It's
Not so
it's
common.
it's
Yeah.
like, really, I've got to have a conversation with another human being and actually ask them some questions. I thought it was all about me flogging you this widget because that's what I get paid for, right?
Yeah.
So from the elements of the clarity method, can you just share what are some of the key components to that lead the customer to make ultimately an educated buying decision, not I'm going to grab you and I'm going to take your money.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I do, and I encourage all of my clients to do this, is to tell them that frame it what you're doing in the beginning. Look, my job here right now is to help you find clarity. It's not to
Mm.
convince you of anything. I have no attachment to your yes or your no. I want
Yeah.
to help you find a clear yes or no. Is
Yep.
that okay? And they're like,
Yep.
yeah, like it disarms them completely. Like you can see them almost exhale
Yeah.
visibly when you say that. And you're like, what I want to do is try to understand what you need, why you need it, and if I have a solution for that.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay. I said, but again, I'm not attached to the answer in the end. I want to just get really clear about it. So I'm
Yes.
going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to get curious. I want to learn more about you and what you need and why. And they're like, okay. And then if you, as the salesperson, can get into a curious standpoint, like I'll ask, and I've seen sales scripts that do this, and I'm not a big fan of the script. I'm more of
Yeah.
a fan of like the why you're doing something.
Yeah.
What's the process?
Yeah.
But I'll have them ask questions like if their goal is to want to build a business. Like, okay, cool. What is it that you want to do? What's the vision of how much you want to make every month?
Mm.
And like, well, I want to make $10,000 a month. I'm like, okay, great, 10,000. Why? Where
Mm.
did that number come from? And they're like, it just sounds like a good number. I'm like, okay, but you had to pull it from somewhere. So let's talk about that. How much
Yeah.
money do you need to make a month? And they're like, well, I think I really need to make about 4 months to feel like I can breathe. I'm like, okay, cool. So you want to make another twice that, 3 times that?
Yeah.
Let's use 10 because it's an easy math, and let's figure that out. So you're 120 for the year. Let's break that down to how many people you need. And then it becomes this very tangible. But when they hear the word, why do you want that number? It puts them into a different place in their brain and their psychology. It also has them go, she's asking me stuff because she's interested
Mm.
and where I'm coming up with this. So now the be seen, be heard, and I'm not just asking for the fun of it. I want to know where it came from.
Yeah.
Somebody said, well, I had a coach one time that said, like, the holy grail is to make $1 million. The holy grail is to make 6 figures. The holy grail is to make whatever they've said. That's where the number came from. I'm like, well, will
Yeah.
you be able to live off that?
Mm.
And they're like, oh. And then there's more that's going on where they have to sit back and go, huh. Like my favorite thing in a sales call is when I ask a question and they sit back and they go, that's a really good question.
Mm.
And I had a woman one time where it was recently where I was talking to her and I said, why this? Why this program now? And
Mm.
she said, what do you mean? I said, well, You told me this is important to you. You want to do this outside of your family. You have a family business. You want to do your own thing. But why now? You've
Mm.
been in this family business for 10 years. Why is it important to you now? And she went, that's that's a really good question. And then she stopped. She goes, why are you asking me that? And I said, because I want to understand, why not 6 months from now? Why didn't
Yeah.
you do this last year? Because
Yeah.
being in business for yourself is really hard. And you understand what it's like to be in a family business, but being in your own business, really hard. And I want to understand what's driving you through the moments that this is going to be really hard.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that thing driving you to get through the moments where it's not going to feel fun
Mm.
and lovely and exciting, then what I have may not be the right solution for you. So I'm
Yeah.
just trying to see if it fits. And she was like, oh. And then it became this whole other conversation, right? And I'm not making this up. This isn't me just blowing smoke. Is I
No,
honestly
no.
want to see, because I don't want to
Yeah.
coach somebody later who's like, this is too hard and you didn't say this was going to be hard. And I'm like, because it
You
stinks.
just told me to follow my passion, Kirsten.
Just follow the passion, it'll be fine. And most of the time it is. But there are the days, right, where this is
Well,
hard.
well, it is. And I had a guy, I spoke to a guy yesterday on the podcast, and he asked me the question, would you rather have, and we're talking about partners, would you rather have, you had choice of two partners, or would you rather take, one was really passionate and one was really committed? Which one would you
Mm,
take? And the whole metaphor behind that was people are encouraged, follow your passion, and that's how you're going to create longevity. But if you look at all successful people in any field, the ones
they're
who are
committed.
committed are the ones that ultimately get the results. Passion
Mm-hmm.
might be an element, but it's not going to drive you to do the things. As he rightly said, right? Running your own business is not for everybody, and it's not going to be a walk in the park. There's going to be some significant challenges you might have to deal with as you go through the journey.
Yeah. And I'm interested in see people succeed.
Yeah,
So if I can bring up also, I mean, like I will sometimes on a sales call push back on the person and say, maybe this isn't the right thing for you right now.
yeah.
And I want them to fight for it. And the ones who are like, you might be right. And I'm like, okay, now I've got information, right? But then they're like, well, wait a minute, why? Well, I need
No,
it to be the right thing. It has to happen now. It has, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about that. Why now? And then this is a whole conversation, but sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is the right, I'm concerned that this isn't the right, and that's not a trick and that's not a tactic. That's a legit concern that when I feel that with somebody, I'm like, can I mirror something back to you?
yeah. I love the psychology. I just love the psychology because it's not some Jedi NLP mind trick. It's literally you care. Because when you think about what selling actually is, it's at its foundation, it's helping, right? So I'm here to help you. And the only way I can help you is to understand what's going on in here and what you want your future to look like. And
Yep.
it's my job to get you clear on what it is that you want to achieve and to verify whether I might be able to help you along that journey. If I can, then I'll give you the opportunity of what the next steps are. If I can't, guess what? I'm also going to tell you.
Super clear with you on that. Are you okay with that? And then people are like, yes. Okay. And again, it's not a trick, it's not a tactic. And I've seen people use it as a trickery tactic where you can feel the misalignment in it. You can feel the charminess of it. Like it's I can feel it
It's a
like going
bit,
down my back. I have
yeah.
to take a shower now from it. It's like that. And you've been
So,
in situations where you've had that guy, right? You've had
yeah,
that
there's a bit of
or
snake
that
oil
girl.
involved.
Yeah. And you're like, ugh. But then you also get the people who genuinely are interested. And that's the space you want to come at this is you answered me, but I want to know what's under the answer. I want to know where that's coming from because a lot of times they don't know themselves.
Mm,
They don't know why it's important. And when I did so much work in the healing space, what I found is that so many of us have conditioned beliefs and traumas underneath why we're behaving or acting the way we are.
yeah,
That brings on illness and it brings on all sorts of things. If you can ask the question that gets you underneath the original answer
yeah.
and you can understand it, they hear themselves saying it, they're hearing it for the first time too. Even when you know the answer, if you can ask a
Mm,
question where they get to verbalize it,
yeah,
it's a whole different conversation.
yeah. And it's almost helping people shift their paradigm because they've been brought up to believe certain things about themselves and they might even thought about, what, I can only earn a certain income level or
Mhm.
I want to run a business and that's my threshold. And that's often based on conditioning that other people have sort of told them or they've just heard through being in the environment. It's fascinating. It is absolutely
Mhm.
fascinating. Now, I wanted to ask you a question because you were talking about how back in the 90s you were very much into back of house sales, back of the room
Yeah.
sales, platform sales, and stuff like that. All the stuff that you do now, can you look
Mhm.
back? Because often we can't join the dots looking forward. It has to be done
Yeah.
looking backwards. Thank you, Mr. Steve Jobs. But if you look back on all the things you do and the lessons you learnt from some of the, I guess, the best salespeople and business people, were you always like this? Were you always seeking clarity and detaching from the outcome? Because I see a lot of salespeople on platforms that do selling from stage, and they almost guilt you into, hey, if you don't go to the back of the room, you're going to miss out, and you don't want to miss out because you need to get this. It's
Yeah, the whole
such a
promo
sales.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's guilt, and that actually most of us a lot of the times are running off of guilt, and we
Mm,
don't realize it because a lot of us were raised to run off of guilt, and we're
mm,
doing things transactionally, not because we're choosing to. We're doing things because we don't want to get into trouble, or
yeah.
we need the love, or we need that. So knowing what I know now about myself and all of the work and some of the very deep work that I've done on myself and with other practitioners, I was always somebody who had a belief that I knew what I was doing, maybe before I showed up. But I think I learned to be very transactional in the beginning. So I did the things to get it right, not because it came from that place of knowing, though something was still driving me from that place of knowing that I was always going to be okay no matter what happened.
Yeah.
But there was a piece of me, and I was raised as a gymnast. So, I mean, I was a very big competitor, and my father was a big competitor, and we very transactional in my family when I was a kid for
Yeah.
love and all the things, and money was a very screwy thing, like most families. But as I look at it, I have to say I was very attached to the outcome before because it meant something about me if somebody didn't say yes.
Yeah.
I had to unlearn that, and I had
Yeah.
to break free of that conditioning. So that was definitely a journey for
Mm.
me. But now I can legitimately just be like, and if you say no, I'm going to be the same person tomorrow, but you're not going to get the solution you need. So, okay, cool. But I mean, I don't say that like that, but in my mind, I'm like, it's your journey if this isn't the right space. And it's my journey also if
Yeah.
it's not the right space.
Love it. And when I say the fact that you don't care, it doesn't mean that you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
care. But I don't care whether you do business with me or not or not. I don't whether you do this now, whether you do it with somebody else, I don't care. What I care about is, are you clear? Are you in a position to want to take action, to want to move forward, to need to move forward, and are you prepared to do the things that are required in order to make that progress? Whether I help you or
Exactly.
not, all good, right? But if I
Yep.
can play a part in that, what I will do, and this thanks to Bob Proctor, I will leave you with an
Good
impression
old
of
Bob.
increase, right? So though when you have a conversation with me, my whole purpose is to help you feel better about having that interaction, not
Yes.
feel better about me, but feel better having had that interaction. And that might plant a seed for future business, or it might plant a seed for future referral. But I'm not doing
Right.
it for that. I'm doing that to serve.
Mm-hmm. And I think that people really don't understand what that term means because sometimes they go into it and they actually go the other direction where they overgive
Yes.
in the conversation. So they do all this consulting and giving because they're trying to be liked or they're trying to serve or they're trying to almost off put I'm not trying to sell you. So they go the other direction.
Yeah.
And then they actually mess things up for the person and they're not serving them because they're not
Mm.
letting them feel the pain or the discomfort. And they try and get them out of it, or they give them just enough information that gives that person the illusion they can go off and do this on their own.
Yeah.
Which, if they had been able to do this on their own, they would have done it by now and they wouldn't be in front of us.
Totally.
So they overserve.
Yeah.
They've overserved the public. They've overserved the people, and they hurt them in the process too. So you have to walk that fine line between you don't want to give them all the answers or partial answers,
Mm.
and you also want to show up in the best way to help that person also leave that conversation with information either way.
Yeah.
But sometimes the information is really just, I need this right now.
Yeah.
But the clarity, again, always back to the clarity is, do you have a clear answer on what you
Mm.
need, whether you're going to move forward with it or not right now?
Yeah.
That's okay.
So with that, Kirstin, there's obviously a fine line. How because the question I've got in my head is, how do you know? Where do I know where the threshold is that I don't want to step over and be over serving, but I also don't want to be underserving. So how do I know where the balance is? Is it, hey, you just got to use your universal intuition,
Yeah.
or is there something else that you've got as maybe a strategy?
Well, that's one of those beautiful moments of you get to reflect back on all the conversations after the fact.
Yeah,
Because there are the moments where you're like, it totally felt like a yes, and it should have been a yes, and this person was the right, it fit, and it doesn't happen. Usually I can tell when it's happening. Now I can tell when it's happening because I'm just like, I can see it. I've overgiven, I have underserved, whatever the story is.
yeah,
But if not, what I tell newer salespeople or people who aren't in that kind of knowing yet is
yeah.
to look back at the call. And a lot of times you should be recording them and watching them back
Mm,
and ask yourself, at what point did it shift?
yeah,
At what point did it become a no and you missed it? And
yeah,
why?
yeah.
Where did you see yourself chasing the person? Where did you see
Mm.
yourself trying to become transactional? Where were you looking for the love or them to like you or you to prove how smart you are? Where
Validation.
was that moment? Yeah. Yeah. Where's the validation? Where's the it's about me part?
Yeah,
Because it really never should be.
yeah.
And or where were you going for the win? Where did you
Mm,
look at your bank account before you walked into that call and you were worried that you weren't paying bills the next day? I've been there where I had, 28 employees and all these people working for me and you were like, "Oh my god." And there were those days and did that influence
yeah.
how you showed up today, or did you have the goal and you were one away from the goal and you pushed just to reach the goal?
Mm,
What was the underlying reason you got into the conversation the way you did?
yeah,
And I'm human too. And I have moments where I'm like, okay, I overserved, I undergave, whatever it was. But I can see it when it's happening typically, and I can course correct now when it
mhm,
happens. But newer people, I really encourage them to have people to go back and watch.
mm,
Because if it didn't close and you were confused, something went sideways in there that you missed a sign.
yeah, yeah. Love it. Love it. So pay attention and review and have a mentor, have somebody who can actually help you and
Always.
maybe unpack it because there might be a specific strategy that you've used that is not, you're not consciously aware of yet, that somebody
Mm.
who does have the experience can pick. And it could be just small things. It may not necessarily be the word that you use, but it could be the tonality used or the punctuation within a sentence that created either a high level of uncertainty or it might have created on the opposite a level of certainty that said, wow, this is why they've now leaned forward and said, what are the next steps?
Yeah. Or you made a statement when you could have asked a question.
Yeah,
Or you didn't hold the space long enough where
yeah,
you got uncomfortable because it was too quiet.
yeah.
And what we don't appreciate sometimes as salespeople is that a lot of times we think very quickly. A lot of the time where the average public doesn't think as quickly as we do because we're
Mm.
in the conversation, out of the conversation. So salespeople tend to be quicker thinkers, I think, across the board as a general rule. And we don't like silence. And so when there is silence, we feel like we need to fill it. And sometimes they're processing,
Yeah.
right? So especially when you've hit them with a number
Mm.
and you say, well, it's only 20,000 if you want to pay in full, and they expected it to be 11, that's a minute. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
they're going to say no, but that's a minute for them to go, oh, I had worked out how this was going to work. And now that's twice what I thought. So they're doing that. And we get uncomfortable because they think they're going to say no. And then we say something.
Yeah.
So it's also things like that where do you know how to hold space for someone versus fill the space?
Mm.
And
Big difference.
holding space is a skill.
Oh, it is. And it takes practice.
Yes. And sometimes the mute button has to go on. So I just
That's
don't get ahead of myself. And yeah, you do things like that so that you don't do something dumb. Because
that's
we
it.
get excited and we're with them and we see the other side for them.
Yeah.
And sometimes just holding the space for them to breathe into it and
Mm.
process and think, okay, I'm gonna have to move money from here to here. And oh my God, I already talked to my spouse about this, but we thought it was going to be half that. And I need to do that. Like that's what's happening in their head. And we need to just hold the space to let them
Mm.
process.
Yeah, absolutely. And not push them, right? Just hold the space for them and then they'll come up with that decision. Question I want to ask you then in relation to that is often we're selling big ticket items. It could be a big widget, a big piece of machinery. It could be a long-term service consulting gig, whatever the case might be. This approach that you use, what's your thoughts on the connection to the price in terms of the value of the price? Does it change? Should it change? Or should we be consistent with the method, irrespective of what I guess, the investment or what some people say the cost is?
So, from the terms of how much we're charging or how we're presenting it, or
Well, in terms of if you're going into an organization and the potential opportunity is going to be worth, I don't know, seven figures as a contract, right? Obviously, the sale is in many cases a lot more strategic. There's
Mhm.
the same methodology used there as what we've been talking about,
Oh,
as
yeah.
compared to doing a $5,000 3-month gig.
Yeah, it's all the same. It's just a different number, right? Because they're all humans we're still dealing with. And people think when you're incorporated, you're going to have this different conversation about them. It's all going to be the numbers and it's all going to be logic. I'm like, they're humans. We are all sensory beings, which means
Yeah.
we actually all process things through our senses first. And then we create the logic to justify our decision. So
Mm.
every decision someone makes, no matter what they think they're doing, they're making it from a place of emotion, and then they're justifying it logically. So you need both. So
Yeah.
if you've got a guy in there and you're talking about a 7-figure contract, you still need to understand what's driving him to want to say
Mm.
yes or no. Because if he's trying to impress his boss and he's got an opportunity to get moved up in the company, if he does this great negotiation with this new vendor, he's being driven by his emotional need to move through the company and be liked and be a winner and all of those things. That's what's driving his conversation with you,
Mm.
right? But he's going to talk about the numbers,
Yeah.
but it's the numbers are the logical justification for what's really driving him in this emotional space. So you want to understand that too. Who else is involved with this decision?
Mm. Mm.
How else will this impact you if you go with this vendor versus this vendor?
Yeah.
I want to understand them as a human
Yeah.
because it's a human still making the decision. Otherwise, we will just, and someday we will have this, we will just have AI just meeting all the salespeople and doing all the things. But until that happens, we got humans right now.
We do. We do. I love this because often I go into organizations and I try to keep things really simple. And I use a very similar method to what you do. And I don't call it the clarity method, but the same sort of principles. And it's amazing how many people look at me and say, "Hey, it has to be more complicated than this. Surely there's a strategic process, or don't you have some sort of spreadsheet or format or tool or sort of worksheet that we have to fill out?"
Like, if you need me to do an infographic for it, I can absolutely do that. But can you get human?
Well, that's the thing, because and we've said it before that people do business with those who they know, who they like,
Mhm.
who they trust, but ultimately who they remember.
Yeah.
So if you can do something that is memorable, whether the sale is going to happen in the first instance or not, because the statistics bear it out, and Gartner came out recently with, and it's verified again, that only 3% of buyers are ready to make a purchase at any one time.
Oh my
Right?
God, can we just talk about that for a second? I'm so tired of the close them on one call, the force to close. I can close somebody on one call, no, not a problem.
Yeah.
Should you close somebody on one call? Typically, no, for a lot of them.
Yes. That's
Mhm.
it. That's it.
One call close, you're dead to me. I have a book in front. I'm literally looking at a book right now on sales where he goes through this whole thing where you're basically dead to him if they don't make, because I only work with winners. And it's like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like,
Which is
no.
which is push sales, right? That is push
Yes.
sales. So if
I'm
we
pretty
understand,
sure this guy has a Lambo.
but here's the question, Kirsten: is it his, or has he rented it for the photo shoot?
I'm pretty sure it's rented, but we'll
Oh, okay,
investigate
okay.
that some other day.
And we'll protect the name of the guilty as well here, so we're
We
not going to
will,
be
because you can probably name 7 of them and it could be any of them. So yeah.
correct, correct. But if we understand that, it means that 97% of our potential customers are not ready to buy now, which means we
No.
have to nurture them. Now, statistics also say that 80% of the sales are made between the fifth and 12th plus
Mhm.
contact.
Yeah.
So whether
The
you're using
touch.
phone sales, whether you're using face-to-face sales, you have to build this relationship and you have to guide them through a process, and not guide them through your sales process, guide them through their purchasing process so that
Yeah.
they feel comfortable that you're the right fit, you've got the right solution, they're ready to make that commitment. And when they do, it's almost a fait accompli that they'll close and do business with you, which is very
Mhm.
much aligned with your clarity method, right? Finding out
Mhm.
what it is they want to do, why they want to do it, and helping them through that process.
And then also leveraging what makes the salesperson unique. So
Yeah.
what works really well for me, as far as the energy that I take and the framework that I bring in, because I have a lot of background experience in a lot of different businesses from a really young age.
Mm.
I've had properties and businesses and brick and mortars and online, and I've sold from platforms. I have a really interesting background when it comes to the number of different businesses I understand from the inside out. Most of my friends are business owners, so I get to talk to them about their businesses, and I get to step
Yep.
on the sales teams of some of my clients just to see what it's like to sell for them. And so I have this really kind of interesting tapestry of background in different businesses. Most
Yep.
people don't, but they have something else. Like
Mm.
there's a woman on one of the sales teams that I work with. She literally had a baby in the middle of the sales cycle during this launch for this client. And she literally will show up on sales calls with a baby who's breastfeeding. And the women that end up in that are moms love selling or buying from her,
Yeah.
because she has this energy of, hear me, I'm a woman, hear me roar. And if you have kids, I'll understand what you're going through. I won't understand that at all. Like, I'm like, take a day off. It's okay. Like, she's like, no, it was a simple pregnancy. I had the baby at home. Like, I'm like fascinated by her. Right. But the women who are attracted to her and that want to work with her and that buy from her are these women who have this energy also of I want to be a mom too.
Mm.
And I want to run a business and I want to feel like I can do both. I can absolutely still sell that person. It doesn't mean that I can't, but she
Mm.
brings a totally different vibe than I do.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That just verifies that people do business those who they know, like, and trust, and are
Mm-hmm.
memorable. Because you
Yeah.
kind of feel good about that. Because the other thing is that a lot of people don't either recognize, understand, or want to recognize is the sale is not about a transaction, because the sale actually doesn't
No.
begin until after the sale is made. So, what's your experience after a transaction? Are you
Yep.
going to be gone and looking out for the next kill, or are
Yeah.
you there to actually service and make sure the experience that you've said you're going to provide is actually over delivered?
Yeah. And that's why I don't love them as much as we joke, but we all know that energy, that push energy, the bro Lambo energy, is that a lot of what happens with a lot of those sales teams is that they get a lot of chargebacks. They get a
Mm,
lot of people who are upset. They get people who get partway through the program and it's not working for them because they feel like I got sold something that's different. And
yeah.
I'm not saying all of these guys are bad. So let's just be super clear there.
No, no,
But you
absolutely.
see that push energy that drag them across the line no matter what energy, you're going to see fewer referrals. You'll see fewer long-term companies
Mm,
in those. They're constantly pivoting and having to change what's going on because they're not doing the long-term energy approach. And it doesn't feel good to me. So that's why I've learned those sales processes and I've used them. And I don't leave feeling good.
ah, ah. It's and it's you may have heard of Simon Sinek, because he's a wonderful American, but
Yes, I
it's
do.
the infinite game, right? It's the
Yeah.
thing that he talks about, that you're here for it never stops, right? So
No.
whether you get a sale today, whether you get a sale tomorrow or next week, how do I leave that impression with them that they keep me top of mind, so that when they're
Mhm.
in that buying window, I'm here ready to serve them, ready to help them, and help them make across that threshold, right? Without
Yeah. But
pushing them.
I've got a guy, like I've got the perfect person for you to talk to. Oh, and I love that when people give referrals because they could have invited you into any like our realtor, the guy that we used to buy the house that we have now. I will refer him to everyone because of how he showed up for
Mm,
us and how he even showed up for us after the sale was done,
yeah,
completely finished.
yeah.
And that's a whole different energy and a whole different vibe because if you're forcing someone to close on the call, and some of them will, but when you talk about the number of touches they had up to that moment, that's
Yeah.
also what we're talking about too. And what was the energy and the feel? And then when they were on the call with you, did they still feel that?
Yeah,
And
totally.
then afterwards, did they still feel that? That's when the
Yes.
referrals come. That's when it gets easier. That's when the ad spend goes down because you don't need the ad spend the same way. It helps you across the board.
And the thing is, and certainly from sales, because a lot of people have this negative connotation around sales, yeah? And it comes from all the stuff we've spoken about today in terms of push sales and all that sort of stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
it's how a salesperson, how a sales leader can turn up when there's actually nothing in it for them, but they do it anyway because they want to continue to serve, because they're focused on, how do I help this person? How do I help them make the next step, whatever the case might be?
Mm-hmm.
That creates a vibe and an energy that says, oh, this person's not in it for them. They're actually genuinely caring about me. How do I now look for opportunities to put people who I hold near and dear to me in their path because I want them to experience the same thing I've experienced?
Yeah.
That's what
And
happens.
I've had experiences where I didn't sell the person as far as we didn't get them into the program, where I've even said, this isn't the right thing for you right
Mm,
now, or it just wasn't the right timing for whatever reason. And they've still given me referrals.
mm,
Right.
yeah,
So it doesn't always, your referral doesn't always have to come from someone who actually enrolled in whatever it was that you were selling,
yeah,
but the energy comes back to
yeah,
you.
totally.
And that's brilliant when that happens.
Law of reciprocity, right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm a huge fan
So,
of 12
hey,
universal laws.
this has been a great conversation. I did want to ask you because I know that you're a neuro resilience specialist. So, and you mentioned before that there's a few autoimmune conditions that you've helped yourself go through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can you help me understand and help the listeners understand this concept of neuro resilience and how it's helped you, but how it's been applied in I guess your business career, your sales career, and how others can sort of tap into that to become better humans, better servers, better performers.
Yeah. So, I mean, the concept of resilience, a lot of us think of this like we've been beaten down and we have to get all the way down and hit rock bottom and we come back up and we're resilient. That's actually not it. The idea of resilience is this idea that we're intentionally, purposely challenging ourselves to build strength and to change the neuroplasticity or the connections in our brain and in our body to be able to be stronger and be more resilient or be better at something the next time we try it.
Mm,
So it's like walking into the gym. You're not going to walk into the gym and pick up the biggest weight. The second you walk in, you're going to pick up the smaller weights and you're going to, over time, purposely challenge yourself so you don't injure yourself and
yeah.
push yourself backwards. You're actually going to build and strengthen and grow. So when you do it with intention, you can actually open up the neuroplasticity or the neural pathways in the brain. It's like little roadway systems. And if you've never taken a road before, you don't know how to actually be on that road. But if you open up a roadway and you start going on it with intention and purpose, and then you go back to that roadway the next day and the next day and the next day, you get to go to that roadway without even thinking about it.
Mm,
Our bodies are actually, our subconscious is actually constantly looking to take something new, create a pattern out of it, to put it into the subconscious where it spends less resources to do it. So if you're driving to work and you drive the same way every day, you sometimes don't even realize you got there because you were on autopilot. Like
that's
you're
it.
like, did I make the turn? You're like, well, I'm here. Like, whoa, I got here and I didn't realize I did it. It's because you've done it so many times, it actually became part of your autopiloting, which is
Mm,
90% of what drives our thoughts, our behaviors, our actions. When you learn something new, it has to go into the conscious brain, which takes up more resources and it's more on purpose, but you have to use a lot more to do it. So
mm,
when you become resilient, neuro resilient, this is when you've gathered the strength to get into those roadways on so many different pathways that you can do it on autopilot and then use the resources for more new learning rather than continuing to learn the same stuff over and over, if that made sense. So this impacts you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It impacts everything around you. It affects the vibration of the people around you, believe it or not, because you literally vibrate
mm.
differently when you're in a space of calm and balance than when your body, and you can measure this, is vibrating when you're confused or fearful or upset.
Yeah.
So it attracts different things to you, literally and figuratively. It has the people around you acting differently when you show up because they vibe literally off of you. So the
Yeah.
neuro resilience is that purposeful, intentional way of building strength around your thought process, your belief systems, your body, and all the other resources that you've got going on inside and out.
Wow. And continuing to look for opportunities to create new conscious pathways to then turn that into
Exactly.
unconscious pathways. So,
Yeah.
so essentially never being satisfied necessarily with where you're at, knowing that we are an evolving human, that we're
Mhm.
never going to be a completed product.
No, we're always going to be flawed individuals. However, if you strive to learn something new and also do it enough, and that's where the patterning comes in, where it
Yeah.
becomes part of you,
Yeah.
then you've done that with intention. You've grown as a being, but also then being grateful because that also helps actually lock it into your subconscious, being grateful for where you are and where you've been.
Wow. I love
So that actually locks it down as to normalize where you are.
it.
And that normalcy can go either way. Like it was very normal for me to be very weird about money as a kid because that was normal in my family. But then I started hanging out with a lot more people who talking about numbers, talking about money became normal. So that was part of the neuro resilience. I changed the underlying pattern of have fear around money and secretiveness to normalcy. So this is also, you can do this by who you hang out with. You know, we are the product of the 5 people that are closest to us, right? So if you want to be, let's say, a millionaire, billionaire, I think is the one we're really all going for now, but let's just say millionaire is still the thing we're all looking for. And you were hanging out with a lot of 5 other millionaires. The chances of you being a millionaire in your lifetime is very high.
Yeah.
But if you're hanging out with 5 broke people, the chances of you being a millionaire are very low.
Yes.
But so when I talk to people, I'm like, what are you watching on TV? What are you reading? Who are you hanging out with? What are you allowing into your psyche?
Yes.
Are you watching the news? Please stop, because that's not helping any of us.
Absolutely.
You know, what are you doing? What podcasts are you listening to? This is why I love podcasts. I know you should be listening to this podcast and not the news, because this is the stuff that real people talk about and it's not being filtered through what the media needs you to see to make you all excited or not excited about something today.
Love it. Love it. Man, we are so powerful beyond measure. We are so powerful.
Agreed.
Hey, this has been awesome. I'm conscious of time because you've had your dinner, but you're about to get some, and I'm not going to say meaningless TV because we've spoken about
it's definitely going to be meaningless.
But that's
I'm doing it intentionally.
Right? That's intentional.
I'm doing that intentionally so I can just hang with my husband and we can just be.
Love it. Hey, Kirstin, thank you for the great conversation. For people who wanted to learn more about you and the great work you're doing, where's the best place for them to see you? Where do you hang out?
The only places I hang out, honestly, well, on podcasts like amazing ones like yours, but they can either find me on LinkedIn or they can find me on evolvedminded.com, because the rest of the social media to me, not so much. Don't love it. I don't dance on TikTok. I don't post pictures on Instagram. I mean, if you find that stuff, it's all going to be my health related stuff. But
love it.
LinkedIn,
love it.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you. This has been a great conversation. If there was one parting message that you could leave for either a salesperson who might be struggling or a sales leader who's not quite getting there, that might help them just take that next step, what would that be?
Ask more questions. Stop trying to sell and just ask more questions. Like if you've ever been near a 4-year-old, just take that energy, right? Like they're so freaking curious and they're like, oh, Aunt Kirstin, well, why? Well, why is this? And you answer them and they think about it and they go, well, why? And it's like instant. And they also don't take no for an answer, which is a whole other story.
That's right.
But why? Why? And I'm like, that is a great question. Why is that an answer? Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much. Great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
Enjoy your meaningless TV watching.
Yay!
Yeah, husband.